Hello and welcome to another episode of the CPMC podcast. I am MC, as always, joined by CP. Chris, what's going on tonight?
Matt, the I couldn't help but get a kick out of this latest Aaron Rodgers statement. I don't know if you saw it, but basically he blames the Packers not communicating with him because they didn't FaceTime him. He did not have service on his phone, and they refused to to FaceTime with him. And he's blaming all their woes, all their lack of communication on that. I mean, I was just dying today reading that on Twitter.
Were they attempting to text or call or email, or was it just because no FaceTimes came in, that was it?
Listen, I mean, it was a throwaway quote. You obviously didn't read the full context, but apparently he was unreachable wherever he was located, out in God knows where he lives. I don't know. Apparently he was unreachable except by FaceTime because there was simply no service. I mean, this man living in probably a $20 million house simply has no service, and you have to FaceTime him over Wi-Fi.
My goodness. If
Incredible.
if somebody FaceTimed me, I would like them even less. So the Packers were doing the right thing, in my opinion. Send me a text, unless there's no reason to do anything other than send me a text. So I do not stand by Aaron Rodgers in this one. Well, we got the Cal Dynasty League here, Chris, tonight. We got a half PPR. We're going to get an extra half point for our tight end receptions. You did the heavy lifting in this one, Chris. You were the expert on this league. I'll be offering my play-by-play as things get released to me. What'd you see in this league tonight, Chris?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, this is only year two of the league, from what we could tell in the league history, and it shows. Honestly, it's super competitive. It looks like a lot of teams sort of still figuring out their way, figuring out which way they want to go. As far as I'm concerned, I think there's nine, 10 teams that are all kind of lumped together that are, you know, not elite, not juggernauts. The juggernaut hasn't been built yet within this league, but I mean, there's some quality teams I think that when you look through it, we're going to see are all kind of missing one to two pieces, two to three pieces, that kind of thing, to really kind of get them in that elite position. And if that happens, I think one team could run away with it. If it doesn't happen, I think we're going to be just super competitive, jockeying for position all year.
Yeah, sounds like it's going to be a fun one then. And guess what? That's what we're here for, is to help you figure out where you stand, offer some suggestions to kind of get you there quicker, either to get you to the top or the second best option is get you straight to the bottom. So for our new listeners out there, we're going to break this down into two shows. On our first show, we're going to rank the teams 12 through 7. And then in our second show, we're going to rank our 6 through 1. They'll both run about a half an hour long or so. So sit tight, get your popcorn ready, and let's get this thing rolling here, Chris. At number 12 here, we are going with Bardalius. Bardalius here sitting at number 12. All right, let's take a look at what we have here. We've got Tom Brady starting at quarterback here. I assume that'll be changed at some point. We got Mostert, Cordero Patterson, Mike Evans, Thielen, Kelsey, Fournette, Higbee, and Baker Mayfield. Chris, if I was to guess, he might not have been too bad last year. We've got Derek Carr sitting on the bench here, likely to get into that starting lineup for Tommy Brady. Sam Darnold, we'll see what happens with him. Rumors are he's in the mix out there in San Fran. I'm not sure I'm buying that, but that's what they're throwing at me. Jonathan Taylor, obviously going to get into that starting lineup as well. Bob Woods, Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett. So we've got just as much down here on the bench, Chris, as we did in the starting lineup currently. We got Jahan Dotson on taxi squad. Trey McBride, interesting piece. You know, we've talked about this before. You love him. I'm still all in on Ertz until the day that man retires. Wow, we have 1 million taxi options on this team. He's got the 7th overall pick in this upcoming draft, which we know that's where the drop off happens. But all right, Chris, talk to me here. We got the number 12 teams. What'd you hate?
Yeah, no, listen, I think this team just to me is just a clear sell. I think this is a team that, is aging. He's got, even Jonathan Taylor, who's relatively young. I mean, he's a running back. We know that shelf life is not long. Our QBs are, I mean, bad at best. with Brady, Baker, Carr, and Darnold. I mean, I'm not buying Darnold starting. Baker, may last only 3, 4 games, maybe to the bye week. He'll like try to go for somebody else. Even though we both like him, think he's going to be okay. But I just don't like the quarterbacks here. Yes, we have Kelsey. Yes, we have Evans. Yes, we have Taylor. It's just not a whole lot else I like beyond that. I think this team, I think, seeing him, he made the playoffs last year, squeaked in there as a 6 seed. But I feel like that's the ceiling for this team. And I think it's only downhill from here, unfortunately. So I'd like to see this team move off of Kelsey and Evans and just get back as much as he can. And Jonathan Taylor as well. I mean, I think those are three pieces that, can really jumpstart the rebuild for this team. And I'd like to see him go that route because I just don't think he's got the horses at all to make another playoff run. And obviously, judging by his draft position, he didn't make the playoff run last year when he had a better chance to do it. So I think his team is trending downward, and I'd like to pivot now, but we can still recoup that trade value.
Chris, I wish that we could say that you could count the amount of teams that we have Baker and Derek Carr starting on one hand, but that's not possible. So if we're saying that's a bad combo, we're gonna have a tough pill to swallow in about 4 months when we get this season going. But I'm with you here, Chris, and I think that's sound advice. I mean, this thing has to be an all-out sell. I mean, with Jonathan Taylor in the starting lineup, with a productive Robert Woods, Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Lockett in this lineup, I don't think that's putting us anywhere near a title contender in this league this year. So, yeah, this has to be an easy sell. And honestly, is there anybody that you're keeping? Anybody?
Uh, no, I would sell everybody here, including Jahan Dotson, who's sitting here on the taxi squad. I mean, he's the young guy that I would consider keeping, but honestly, I think he's overpriced right now. So I think if you can sell him at his cost, I think he's more valuable to trade than he is to keep on your team.
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't often see that with second year receivers. Usually they hold more roster value than trade value, but that's a little bit different. I think with all these second year wide receivers, Chris, we're seeing them go far too high, in my opinion, in these drafts. But yeah, I think that's where we've got to end up here, Chris, is just sell, sell, sell. Just see what you can get. Start with Kelsey with this tight end premium. I think that's where we begin. If we can get 2 or 3 pieces back, I think that's a start.
Absolutely. I mean, it has to be there. I mean, Kelsey's still, he's going to be the elite tight end one until he retires, basically. So I think that as much as you can get back there, that'll be a huge jump start for him.
All right, Chris, let's move on to our number 11 squad. We've got Nightmare on Owls Street. Nightmare on Owls Street. Looks like they finished in last year. Let's see what we have here this year. I mean, Huntley and Drake, not even worth mentioning. Antonio Gibson. Justin Fields sitting on the bench. Lamar Jackson. Sorry, Justin Fields at Superflex. Lamar Jackson on the bench, going to be in this lineup. Let's see. What do we have here, Chris? It's going to be in there. Michael Thomas, Chris Olave. Not a whole lot else on injured reserve. Taxi squad's got Juan Dale, Likely, Aljair, James Cook. Boy, this guy's taking use of half his taxi squad here. Nothing else there. He's got pick 11. He's got pick 1 in this draft, 201 as well. So we could add 3 players to this roster. But oh boy, Chris, this team's in a world of hurt.
Yeah, and let's focus on the good with this team, right? The best part about this team is you've got Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields. So your window here is wide open, right? I mean, it is with those two guys, you've got yourself a good 5 to 6 years here where you can make something happen. It's not going to be this year. You can afford to slow build this thing, as Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson continue to play through their primes. They're probably not even there yet. Couple that with Chris Olave with your number 1 pick. This is an interesting spot, I think, for the number 1 pick because, yeah, Bijan Robinson is going to look great on this team, but will this team be ready a year from now to compete? I think it's possible. I do. But I think you have to be open to trading that 101 for 3 to 4 pieces. And I think that's what Bijan commands right now. He's going to be, Matt, probably a top three position player off the board in the coming weeks of dynasty drafts. I would bet my money on that. Now that we know his landing spot and we know how he's going to be involved, so I think if you can get 3 to 4 pieces for him, I keep that open with this team because I think he just needs more quality pieces than anything.
Oh man. Yeah, we can't draft Bijan here, Chris. It's got to be traded away. I don't think he's a year away. I don't think he's really even 2 years away from being where we want him. I think, Chris, I'm starting by selling 101, and I think then I'm going to follow that up with selling Lamar Jackson. I mean, he is off the charts right now in ADP ever since he signed that very lucrative deal. I'm going to hold on to Justin Fields only because I think they're similar players, and Fields just his value is just a little bit lower than Jackson right now. I'd love to get 2 pieces for Lamar. I'd love to get 2 pieces for 101. I think if I could just drop back to 103 or 104, be happy with one of those quarterbacks, Chris, pair those guys up with Justin Fields, get rid of Lamar Jackson, and see where we end up. So the order of operations here, Chris, is Lamar has to go. If I can get rid of him for position players, focusing on wide receivers, despite it being half PPR, and then I'm going to trade away 101, try to drop back into that 103, 104 range where you can get one of those quarterbacks, which I don't care which one I get. And then I think suddenly that window's open and we've got more pieces to use. I think that's where I'm starting because Bijan Robinson's just going to get lost on this team. And I'd hate to see that happen.
Yeah, you'd have to find it's definitely a two-pronged approach, right? If you're going to go that way, I'm not sure I would want to, but I get it. This team, we're both saying the same thing, that this team just needs more pieces. So, if we trade Lamar, we've got to be able to pick up one of these rookie quarterbacks. If we can't trade Lamar, I mean, if we can't move back to get the rookie quarterbacks, we've got to figure out a way to get multiple pieces for that 101. And we've got to get a quarterback back if we trade Lamar. So there's some really interesting maneuverability here on this team. But the message is the same from both of us: need more pieces.
Yeah, let's keep our eyes open, Chris, when we see whoever has pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, see if there's anything out there for that team, for Nightmare to be able to drop back just a little bit. All right, let's move on to number 10, where we've got the Metcon. Metcon at number 10 here, Chris. We've got Josh Allen, Javante, DeAndre Swift, A.J. Brown, Christian Watson, Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram, and Hollywood Brown. We've got Kenny Pickett at Superflex here. Guys on the bench worth a mention. Samaje Perine, Jamal Williams, who we both like this year. Damian Harris, I think, is a puzzling piece out there in Buffalo. Michael Gallup, Paris Campbell, interesting plays. I think Darnell Mooney and George Pickens, who I do like this year, Chris. George Pickens, Peoples Jones may be worth a mention as well. Nothing on Taxi. No first this year, Chris. His first pick's going to be at 209 this year. I like this team, man. We've taken a massive step forward compared to what we've just seen. And you said at the top of the hour, we've got, maybe a stack of 10 teams that are kind of lumped together. I think we're starting to see this because this might be one of the better 10th ranked teams we've seen.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, here's this to me was where the tier broke between the bottom and the top. I mean, I think, you can argue that this team should be ranked higher as we go through, but at the end of the day, I just saw the Kenny Pickett super flex position, and it just wasn't enough for me comparatively to some of the other teams, and I think that's why I popped him down here. Plus you've got DeAndre Swift on a new team. You got Javante Williams coming off the injury, Christian Watson with a downgrade at quarterback. To me, there was just enough reasons here to push him down at 10, but man, it's hard not to like the upside here with a team with Josh Allen, AJ Brown, the aforementioned DeAndre Swift, Evan Ingram in Jacksonville. I mean, there's a lot of upside on this team. I think his team could be pretty good. He's got a decent bench as well with Samaje Perine and Jamal Williams, Donovan Peoples-Jones, potentially Michael Gallup as well for some big plays, George Pickens. There's a fair bit to like on this team. I think if we had a veteran presence here at this Superflex, if this was Matthew Stafford instead of Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett was my number three, or we could mix and match those two guys in matchups this season. I'd probably have this team ranked 4 to 5 spots higher, but as it stands now with just Kenny Pickett and no real other options on the bench at QB3, I've got him down here at 10, but I would not be shocked at all if things broke right for this team and it made the playoffs.
Yeah, Chris. I mean, we always say with these leagues that are so tightly packed together that we're just looking for teams that don't have question marks to rank them higher. And this team, for me is loaded with question marks top to bottom. Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift on that new team, Christian Watson having Jordan Love throw him the ball. Evan Ingram, is he going to get the target share that he did last year with more mouths to feed this year? Hollywood Brown, um, you know, is he the number one now with DeAndre Hopkins out of there? He just might be. We'll see what that looks like for him. And then Kenny Pickett. I mean, he's back end QB late two, I think, in my opinion. And I mentioned a few guys on the bench. I think there's some pieces, but it's not overly great to kind of cover up the question marks that I just mentioned. So I think that's probably what we're going to see as we move up the ladder here in tonight's show. Is that the teams that are a little bit higher have less question marks. But that being said, Chris, I can't trade away my 2024 to try to shore this thing up. I think we kind of see what it is. If it hits its ceiling, yeah, it's a playoff team, it's a competitive team. But if those question marks turn out to be a little bit negative, I don't think we can trade away our pick because of that. So I'm kind of keeping it the way it is here, Chris, because it does have that ceiling. But man, if the floor falls out and you don't have your pick, it could be problems.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to say this a lot going through the show here. Is that this is a wait and see team. It's a team we're going to wait a month, 6 weeks, see what happens. I don't want to give my pick away either. But if I'm competitive, maybe we can maneuver some trades with players. Maybe pay a second for an upgrade somewhere, that kind of thing. But I don't want to give away my first regardless. But for the most part, I'm just kind of letting it ride with this team. I'm with you. Just kind of see what happens through 5, 6 weeks. Make the plays you need to make. I think if things go south for this team, I think DeAndre Swift is a guy you can get off of if he's playing well. I mean, I know he's only 24, but he's on his second team now. If you can get out from under him and flip him for wide receiver value, maybe that makes sense if things go south for you. If things go well, I think I'm just gonna kind of hold tight with my young team and see how I do and sort of slowly build this thing some more as the years go on.
Yeah, the good thing I like about this team, though, Chris, is that none of these guys are like a year away from being out of their prime. I think these are
Right.
all guys that we can kind of, if things don't go well this year, I'm okay running it back with this same squad next year and add whoever we're able to get with that 24 pick. So I think we tread carefully with this team and just kind of see what we can do because I think the upside is unquestionably there. All right. Let's get to number 9 here, Chris. We've got Seattle Sioux 80. Seattle Sioux sitting here at number 9, looking at a team of Joe Burrow, Deontay Foreman, Nick Chubb, DK, Juju, Dawson Knox, Isaiah Pacheco, Austin Eckler. Currently got Deontay Johnson, Superflex. That's going to be Matthew Stafford in just a few moments. Guys on the bench, we've got Jarvis Landry, Chris. I'm always going to mention him. No way I'm ever going to pass over Jarvis Landry. One guy will always skip over is this chosen Anderson, which it drives me nuts that he's changed his name. He stinks. He's my least favorite player in the league. He's the what's his name? Draymond Green of the NFL, in my opinion. Hate him. What else do we got here? Nothing on IR. Taxi Sod's got Traylon Burks there. And nothing else. Pick situation. He's got 103. That's good news. As far as this team goes here, Chris, I don't see him trading with that team who did have 101. So that option is out. Talk to me about this team, Chris. I don't love this team here.
I think it's okay. I mean, listen, we've got Burrow, we've got Stafford. I think our QBs are okay. We've got Chubb, we've got Eckler. I think our RB's okay. We've got Pacheco here in the flex spot. What I didn't like here, Matt, was the depth really. I mean, we're banking on Rashad Bateman, or Treylon Burks to kind of really take a step up this year to give us some depth, or even potentially, a starter if Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't work out. But I think it's just sort of an okay team. I think outside of Joe Burrow, I just don't think we've got enough ceiling players on this team. Nick Chubb, nice player. DK Metcalf, fine. Maybe less so here with the rookie coming in, JSN. Um, Austin Eckler, obviously solid player, you know, but another year older. And the Chargers, I don't know if they're going to run him into the ground or what. Deontay Johnson, again, another solid. But I think it's just like a solid yet unspectacular team that I think very easily could make the playoffs as it stands. But I mean, I've got them out of the playoffs right now. It just seems sort of the ho hum outside of Joe Burrow to me.
Yeah, I think ho hum's probably the best way to put it here. But again, I could kind of see the ceiling play with this team as well. Chris, is there any moves you would consider here?
That this is a sort of I Matt, I've been like racking my brain on this league since I looked at it this afternoon. It is so hard for me to figure out moves with a lot of these teams because they're all seemingly potentially like top four teams. And they all potentially could be, it's out of the playoffs. So it's really, really difficult. I This is another team I think I'm just gonna wait and see. I know I'm getting another quarterback here at 103. I'd love to trade out of that if I could, but I don't think there's people going to be giving up quality position players for that 103. We just haven't really seen it in the drafts we've done so far. And I don't think within the context of this league, it makes a lot of sense for people to trade their position players for a young quarterback. So I don't think it's going to happen in this league either. So honestly, I think I'm just sitting tight with this team. It's a fairly young core. If I don't do well, I'm trading off Eckler, I'm trading off Chubb, getting what I can get and retooling for next year.
Yeah, I've talked myself into a trade here, Chris. I've talked myself into just selling everything, starting with Stafford, Eckler, and Nick Chubb. I mean, Eckler and Chubb, their value is falling fast. And I think we're a couple bad games away from really seeing the bottom drop out of the value for both of those guys. I see what you mean, Chris, with the rest of the team being relatively young. But man, I'd love to be able to get off of those guys to get equivalent young wide receivers and build it out that way. Get rid of Stafford, really go forward with Joe Burrow and whoever I get at 103. I mean, I look at this bench that is, very, very weak. I don't think this team has the upside that we saw in the last team. I think this team maybe has less question marks, but for that reason, I'm going into sell mode with this team, trying to acquire picks in a league that you talked about, Chris, is being so similar with a lot of these teams. Sometimes you got to risk it and zig while everyone else is zagging.
Yeah, I mean that's I think that will determine a lot is who can become that heavy buyer, who can become that heavy seller. And I don't disagree that that's a play at all. I think it's a very reasonable play here for this team. Problem is just God, it's just so hard to find equivalent young wide receivers for the likes of Eckler and Chubb. It just sort of doesn't exist unless you want to take on, a guy like Jordan Addison or, a guy like, Christian Watson. They're just sort of okay, not great, and you don't know. But I guess that's right. You take that risk and you see what happens. Especially if you're not competing. I think it's a very reasonable route to take.
I think even with Eckler, Chris, in a half PPR league, could we get into the Waddle territory? I think we've got to take that into consideration when we're thinking of value.
I would, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think you're there. To me, I'd much rather have Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that little range of wide receivers is a range that we've been avoiding like the plague in all of our drafts. And that's kind of those overpriced second year wide receivers that we were talking about. But all right, good thought there. Let's talk about our number 8 team, Chris. We've got E. Thomas KC. E. Thomas KC sitting here at number 8. We've got a lineup of Kyler Murray, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Smith, Gerald Everett, Cortland Sutton, Cooper Kupp, and Desmond Ritter. Man, Chris, I was so high, and then I know you can't see me, but I just dropped my head when I saw Desmond Ritter. Oh man, I wish I said any other name than Desmond Ritter, and I would have been tearing into you for this team being so low. But you've got it right here, I think. Let me finish it off here. We've got Cam Akers sitting on the bench. We've got Kenny Gainwell, maybe a name worth monitoring. Who else here, Chris? Um, Nothing else really. Logan Thomas, Mike Gesicki's a guy that you like. Taxi Squad's got nothing for my money. Pick situation is 108, 208, and so on. I feel like we're a tiny move away here, Chris, from taking this team to a top three team. And I think it's an easy one. I mean, I'll let you speak on the team in just a moment, but Desmond Ritter first for Matthew Stafford. Who says no?
I mean, I would not be thrilled getting Desmond Ritter back for Matthew Stafford, just in general. I think it's a reasonable deal. There's some hype coming in on Ritter, but it's not from me. That's my own personal bias creeping in there. I you know, throw me something. I mean, Desmond Ritter in a second for Stafford. I mean, then I'm okay with it. But if that's a deal that can get done, I think this team jumps, 3, 4 spots in the ranking. That's all he's missing. I like the team overall. I think it's great. There's really not a hole until you get to Desmond Ritter, and he's got the upside in guys like Cup and Tony Pollard and Derrick Henry. I mean, and Devontae Smith. Really, really strong team. He's got Cam Akers as well, who can get in that starting lineup. 108, I think, is going to be a contributing player as early as this season. So I like this team overall. I mean, we've just got to figure out a way to get a quarterback upgrade. I don't care who it is, whether it's Stafford, whether you buy Geno Smith on the cheap, whether it's Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't matter. We've got to get something here. I don't think you necessarily need to go big and use all of your trade capital to get an elite quarterback. We just need somebody who's going to be productive.
Man, people hate Matthew Stafford. I can't get off. I can't shake that deal. I mean, that's a deal that has to get done. I think that's some of my best work right there, coming up with such an even trade. Man, then you stack up Stafford and Cup. I think that's something that's really, really attractive for this team. And it's kind of a last hurrah for this team when you got the likes of Derrick Henry on the team, Gerald Everett, Cortland Sutton. Everyone's riding him out of town. He's a guy that we've been scooping up based on value recently. So that's it, Chris. You said it, man. Let's get that quarterback. I'm stuck on Stafford. If I'm this team, man, I'm not budging until I get Stafford. It shouldn't take too much more than Ritter, I think, to get it done. Looking at the bench, I mean, I think I might throw in 208. If somebody says no to that, then they can pound rocks.
That's what I was thinking. Is Ritter in 208 gets me a quarterback one way or the other, whether it's Stafford or somebody else. But the idea of the stack is pretty nice, though.
Yeah, I think as we go on in just a little bit, Chris, I'm going to circle back to some of our more recent drafts and see where Ritter and Stafford are going in drafts. I think it's got to be pretty close. I mean, God, Ritter's a second year, likely walking into a starting job on an up and coming offense. I mean, there's not many guys in a better situation. So we'll see on that. I'll check in on that in just a moment. Let's get to our number 7 team, Chris, while we wait. We've got Big Country that's going to finish us out for this first show here. Big Country at number 7. We've got Herbert. We've got Cook, Sanders, Gabe Davis, Amon Ra, Fryermuth, Aaron Jones, Mike Williams, and the aforementioned Aaron Rodgers. Guys on the bench, Trey Lance. We got to see what happens with him. Jerick McKinnon, Rashad Penny had that job all locked up. Then DeAndre Swift comes right in. Eli Mitchell, Calvin Ridley, I think is going to be a big contributor this year. Noah Fant as well. KJ Osborne. Nothing on injured reserve. Nothing on tax. We've got 106, 206, and beyond. I like this team here, Chris. Looks like he finished in 7th place last year since he's got pick 6. I could see him repeating his 7th place again.
Yeah, so I got him right in this middle of the pack here, 6, 7, 8. I think it's just a team that's got a lot of bankable points on it. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for this team. This might be a team that is an early contender to sell very quickly in my opinion, depending on what happens with Dalvin Cook, depending on how Miles Sanders plays, Aaron Jones, how he looks in the new look Packers offense. Mike Williams is a guy who could be traded. Aaron Rodgers as well. I think this is a team that uh, I may want to get ahead of this thing and start trading if I'm this team because it's hard for me to see this team ever at any point as constructed being better than a middle of the pack team. And that's honestly in Dynasty, that's the worst place you want to be. So this is a team that I want to sell with, and I won't be afraid to trade Justin Herbert on this team here for a mint if I could get it. Yeah, that's what I've talked myself into it, Matt. I want to sell with this team, and nobody's locked down as far as I'm concerned.
All right, Chris, let me just report back on my Desmond Ridder, Matthew Stafford. I looked at 4 leagues. In 2 leagues, Matthew Stafford went 2 rounds ahead of Desmond Ridder. In 2 leagues, Desmond Ridder went 2 rounds ahead of Matthew Stafford. So I think we can say we don't have a settled answer on the value of these guys. Maybe we need things to kind of cool off around Ridder and just kind of see where things end up with this team. All right, Chris, back to this team. Oh, man, you said it, bankable points was the greatest comment that you said here, but we're also missing things. I mean, what are we getting with Gabe Davis, Pat Freiermuth, guys like that? Aaron Jones seems to be falling a little bit out of favor. And we're looking at a team that has a couple of pieces that are useful on the bench as well. Oh, man, what's the move that you want to make here?
I want to get ahead of this thing and start selling that. I think that's what I do. I just I have a hard time seeing this team ever being better than the fourth place team. And that's just not where I want to be. I don't think this team has the horses to ever win a title. And he's obviously not nearly bad enough to bottom out. So I want to shake things up one way or the other. And for me, it's selling most players on this team, including Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go because I think you're right here. And we may have hit the peak with this team too. Like you said, it's not getting much better, but the peak for this team, I don't think is title winning this year. So I think that's sound advice. Oh man. The problem is a lot of these guys trade values in the crapper right now. Excuse my language. But guys like Miles Sanders, I don't think people are liking him any more than they did last offseason. Dalvin Cook, I don't know if you could give him away right now. Aaron Jones, same thing. Mike Williams, same thing. Aaron Rodgers, who knows? We didn't help his value with our comments at the top of the show. So that's the problem with this team, Chris. I think it's the right play, but what are you getting for value?
Yeah, you're going to have to wait until those guys are actually scoring points because I do think they will score points. Aside from Justin Herbert and Calvin Ridley, there's not really a lot of guys that have jumped up in value on this team in the offseason. Amon-Ra St. Brown has as well. But those 3 guys are really it. Everybody else, you're going to want to see some points being scored before you trade them off. But listen, this team, maybe you wait a month, see what happens. And, if things are looking good, you stick with it. If not, get off these guys.
All right, Chris, that's going to do it for us for show 1. We'll be back at you in just a little bit with our ranking 6 through 1. While you're waiting, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back to you guys in a little bit.